Brendan Fraser is one of the most loved actors in the world, but he went through an extremely dark period. It's important to know the people who ruined his life. In the late 90s and early 2000s, Brendan Fraser was seen as this young guy who was making $14 million a movie and doing some most popular franchises around. But then cut to just a decade later in the mid-2010s, and he's gained a massive amount of weight, isn't looking anywhere close to himself, and he's no longer working in this state of depression. And Brendan Fraser grew up in a regular middle-class lifestyle where his parents were immigrants from Canada and his dad was a journalist who worked for the Canadian government. With the only person who had fame in his life being his Uncle George, who found fame in 1952 for being the only Canadian to win a gold medal at the Summer Olympics, but that man actually died in the late 80s, so he never helped out Brendan Fraser's career. Brendan Fraser was able to have success early on in acting because when he was 22 years old, he landed the role of Link in the movie Encino Man, which was a huge hit. Which was a big deal seeing how he beat out Ben Stiller for the part, who was a much bigger name actor at the time and also did have a little bit of a nepo baby thing going on where his father was successful comedic actor Jerry Stiller. The Encino Man director said he ultimately picked Brendan Fraser because he was just such a happy guy on set and cheered everybody up the moment he walked on stage. For a period of about 5 years, Brendan Fraser was only doing side roles like Encino Man, but then in 1997 he had a huge hit with George of the Jungle, which made $177 million on a budget of $55 million. Brendan Fraser explained that role actually put him in a state of depression because he was under such a strict diet that he was actually passing out during the production of the movie. The reason he didn't do the sequel George of the Jungle 2 was because the studio actually offered him less money than the first movie, saying he was replaceable as an actor and nobody really cared. Just looking at how that movie was so bad it went from being planned for a theatrical release to just a DVD release really shows Brendan Fraser was in the right on that one. Brendan Fraser had a better opportunity come his way in the late 90s anyway, with the Mummy movies, where the first one he was paid $4 million, and then for the sequel he was paid $12 million. And even though he was paid $14 million for the third one, there was a period of 7 years where a lot of very rough things happened to him that were impacting his personality. The first one being in 2003 when Philip Burke, who was the head of the Golden Globes, assaulted Brendan Fraser sexually, and it did break his spirit. Well, Brendan Fraser explained that in 2003 he was at an event and by his own admission was a little bit drunk, but then Philip Burke, who was the president of the Globes, began to grab his butt and then put his finger inside of him. And after that incident happened, Brendan Fraser said he was afraid to report it to anybody because Philip Burke was a much more powerful person in Hollywood than he was. Brendan Fraser explained when he did bring it up to people, he was told to be silent about it because if he did come out as some sort of victim to Philip Burke, who was just this older, very frail looking guy, it would take away from his image as being this masculine guy in Hollywood. And the only person that he actually told the full story to was his wife at the time, Afton, and looking at everything with their history, she just didn't have his best interest at heart. Brendan Fraser and his wife Afton got married in 1998, and they stayed together until 2009 for an 11-year marriage, but when they got divorced, Brendan Fraser was ordered to pay $900,000 a year in alimony and child support to her. Which the reason she came to that number was because a year prior he made $14 million doing The Mummy 3, but the problem was there was a lot of things that happened in that movie that prevented him from acting further. Brendan Fraser explained the Mummy movies never had the best safety, where the first movie he was actually left hanging there with the rope and they thought he was acting, but he was actually choking, and if it didn't break he would have died. And after filming The Mummy 2, because he was filming his own stunts, he actually had several spinal disc tears, and because of that I had to see a neurosurgeon. But then the third Mummy movie was by far the worst, where he actually had a big fall, and because of that later on he needed a knee replacement and also spinal surgery. And that put him in a bad situation because for years he was known as this action movie actor who was like this good looking man, and then there was this huge problem that he couldn't do action roles and he actually couldn't work out either, so he gained a lot of weight in a short period of time. Because Brendan Fraser wasn't able to work and make money for years, the one thing he requested of his ex-wife was to have some sympathy for him and instead take a child support and alimony payment of $450,000 a year instead of $900,000, but she told him no in court and he was still ordered to pay. And health was a major factor for why he didn't do Journey to the Center of the Earth 2, where the first one was a huge hit, making $240 million on a budget of $60 million, and they were going to offer Brendan Fraser millions for the sequel, but he just couldn't do it. And the other issue was the movie's director, Eric Brevett, couldn't do it because he was making the Yogi Bear movie and he had issues with the studio, so Brendan Fraser didn't return out of loyalty. Speaking of studios, they just didn't have this confidence in Brendan Fraser because the failure of Looney Tunes Back in Action in 2003, and a lot of studios just called him this aging action movie actor who just didn't have a future. And all of this just put Brendan Fraser in this massive issue with his life where he was stressed out and upset about what happened with Philip Burke. His ex-wife betrayed him and took a massive amount of money from him, so he was taking a financial toll. He was physically just on the run from doing the Mummy movies, and also no studio saw him outside of this young face, so getting older, losing his hair, and gaining weight, they didn't want to hire him. What it all came down to was the people, where there was a subreddit forum that ended up getting tens of thousands of people saying they wanted Brendan Fraser to do movies again. And some people at Warner heard about this and they saw the fan demand, so they asked him to be in the show Doom Patrol, saying it was just a voice role, so it was better for him physically. But when Brendan Fraser saw the public support as well as the Me Too movement, he went against Philip Burke, finally telling everybody in 2018 what happened, and because of that, Philip Burke was removed from the Golden Globes and Brendan Fraser was validated. And finally, Darren Aronofsky asked Brendan Fraser to do the movie The Whale, which was this huge hit, making $57 million on a budget of $3 million, making it a huge hit for an indie movie. For every studio that told him he couldn't act, he ended up winning an Oscar for Best Actor from it, showing he could do drama roles and not just action. And then there was also the financial toll of his divorce, where his wife's alimony actually expired, and then all of his kids turned 18, so minus paying for his education, he's no longer spending $900,000 a year on his ex-wife. And Brendan Fraser's also lost a lot of weight and gotten his health more in order in the last couple of years, and he's getting more roles, but I think the best moment is this frame right here from when a girl told him that the public loves him and he just started crying on screen. And with that, I'm Charles Perrault. Please subscribe to learn something.